Hey, welcome everyone. This is the Restored Justice podcast. We're continuing in our series with Bruce. Today we have a wonderful guest who you'll get introduced to here in just a moment. Bruce, we're in episode 6 as we unpack this idea of gospel justice. We've been looking at the story of the Samaritan, not the story, but the parable of the Good Samaritan from a lot of different angles. Today's a fun one because we actually get to see and talk about the Samaritan himself, right? Set this up for us. And obviously the story was set in Jesus' day, so he uses the Samaritan as a picture. Draw the first parallel to what would that person or that character look like in today's world in a relatable way.
Sure, Joe. Thanks. So I do think we have to understand Jesus' context to really understand the Samaritan. We talked about earlier how I grew up in the church like you did, and so I tend to think of the Samaritan as this wonderful Sunday school story of this very nice guy that stops and helps somebody. But in Jesus' day, the Samaritan was right alongside demon possessed, right? Jesus was accused of being a Samaritan and demon possessed. They were the lowest of the low, or people that were outcast. You walked all around Samaria. So Jesus purposely chooses this person that's a different race, that's a different religion, that's kind of a foreigner and somebody who's despised and outcast to kind of shock his audience versus the priest and the Levite that we've talked about, these really good religious characters that would be seen as good people today. And what I say, one of those, now there are several probably that fit within that Samaritan, that other category that we don't want to go near, but one of those today, I will just say, because we continue to rank on the least trustworthy, right there with politicians is lawyers, and frankly, a lot of lawyers are politicians, so we get a double ding. But
and there's a few jokes out there about you guys too.
There are, in fact, Lori here. I don't know if you've heard this one, but I love this story. I share it in Gospel Justice. It's the story of a man and his son that are out visiting a cemetery, and the boy stops at a grave, and he's just confused. And he looks up at his dad, and he says, "Dad, why are there two people buried here?" The dad's confused too. He goes over and he reads the epitaph, and it says, "Herein lies a lawyer and a Christian." So believe it or not, those things are not mutually exclusive. And the Samaritan demonstrated that it wasn't about a label, it was about demonstrating love. And God is not a God of labels. He is all throughout Scripture a God of love, and calling us to that and those loving actions of the Samaritan.
Bruce, a quick intro of Lori and how you know her.
Lori, because Lori is a friend of Joe and mine. She serves on the board of Administer Justice. She's a recovering lawyer herself, but primarily works in the corporate world for Microsoft. And has worked in other corporate settings. So she certainly has insight and works a lot with people in the corporate world trying to intersect faith and work because of this image that sometimes gets cast upon people of a Samaritan, and how that's not God's call. God's call is to help us live that out through love, our true selves in the workplace. And Lori is one of the best spokespeople I know to that end.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the invite and for the opportunity to share it. And I really think that, business people today can be modern day, Samaritans, right? And I love the generosity that is shared in the story, in and through faith, in the story that we can also have in the workplace, right? By willing to help others, even when it's not convenient, willing to see the need as the Samaritan has done, not turning the blind eye, to the injured on the road. And we can create a more compassionate and supportive workplace. And I love how he also invested significant time and resources to help the injured man. And we can do that, in business as well, being generous, with our resources, with our time, and also money, being committed to go beyond what is expected to support others.
So Bruce, when you think of this perspective, the perspective of the Samaritan, right? And in today's world, like Lori just said, the business people, the lawyers, and there's so many other groups, but we're just going to pick on two for now. What are some other insights we gain from looking at the parable the way Jesus described it, and what happened during that day?
Yeah, I love that Jesus purposely chose the least likely person in the day. And today, I do think that people think it's least likely, those of power, privilege, money, that they will be the ones that will stop. And sometimes, here's our caution, sometimes we can tend to believe that. So then we will live into that stereotype, which is not healthy. Right? What a great opportunity for a business person to demonstrate exactly what the Samaritan did. I mean, 2 days' wages is not insignificant.
No.
That's what a denarii was, a day's wage. So he does that. taking what he has right with him. I mean, he's a traveling merchant. I say that in the book. He almost certainly is, because the Samaritan's not going to be in Israel territory either on this Jericho road with a mule. I mean, he clearly is a traveling merchant and would make the most sense just to ignore needs around him. But this business person stops, uses the resources that he has, the oil, the bandages, the medical care, spends time and money, just as Lori just said, to see this person restored. And business people today, I believe business is the greatest marketplace. And I know Lori will say this, for being able to live out true faith, just demonstrate being a good Samaritan, because workplaces can do that. They can help stop, give a small portion of their funds. As you know, in our world at Administer Justice, just a $5,000 gift would open up a new community location, a Gospel Justice Center. And for a lot of people, that's probably just 2 days' wages, maybe. Or it's not a $1 million gift, but whatever resources, whether it's time or treasure, it's a great opportunity for the Samaritan to turn the world upside down and say, yeah, I know you think it's my money or my time, but I know it's God's, and I want to live that out.
Lori, you work in a big company, right? And this big company has programs, and so they've set up through HR ways for money to be directed by employees. You've kind of been on this campaign to convince employees across this global organization to direct resources towards organizations like this, because they could divert it anything they want. Just give us the fast version of what you've been doing and how that's going in mobilizing people in large corporations to focus on small organizations like AJ.
I love the opportunity that we can make meaningful, significant impact, not only through donations, which is huge, but also giving our time. And I love how Microsoft donates $25 an hour to the nonprofit that we serve, and we volunteer. And I love the opportunity that we have, at Administer Justice to volunteer, half day on Saturday to serve our vulnerable neighbors, and also being able to make an impact, with the donations that come in through tracking our time.
That's pretty cool. So, I mean, think about that, Bruce. What if more and more companies said, hey, we'll actually fund our employees who want to go volunteer, go do stuff. And it's not going in the volunteer's pocket, it's going into the nonprofit's pocket. But it's another great, powerful tool that's being used these days for good. Bruce, as you think about the Samaritan perspective, right? And obviously you're challenging all of us that are in the business world, in the work world, and especially lawyers, to think and act like the Samaritan. Is there or is there a real life story you want to draw our attention to that makes this very practical, or any other insights you want to make sure we grab during this session?
Well, I think it's important. I love what Lori said, because it is such a great opportunity. You can seem like a little when you're volunteering, and I wish more companies, and some companies are. Microsoft partners with some other big companies that are doing great social good, which is so important. And the more and more we do that, the more and more we flip the narrative that everybody in America is at war with one another and can't stand one another, because we actually can come together regardless of our differences. We can come together around loving people who need help. I think it takes a pretty callous person not to care about somebody who is down and out or just really needs a hand, because that's our clients. Our clients are not going to stay there. They're not perpetually poor, broken, whatever. They're in circumstances where they need somebody to just come alongside them, and then they can move forward in greater health. And we are all stronger when we do that. Now, certainly we are doing that motivated by our Christian faith, but there are good reasons to work across different aisles there, even to invite people in to show what the love of Christ looks like without disparaging or drawing lines. Even that Samaritan that was different religious, we don't have to draw any kind of lines. We can draw people together. And that's what we see every Saturday. Most of our centers operate on a Saturday, as Lori said. And every weekend, somebody's walking into a church they did not expect. It's like the church now is a Samaritan. They did not expect them to care about their community. They did not expect the people there to be loving, non-judgmental, and really demonstrate care and concern for them. And so one person recently, this is the kind of care they get, is what she reported back. And they just, I love these kinds of quotes that we literally get every week. So this is within the last couple of weeks from when we're taping this. But the client said, I appreciated the feeling of actually being heard. I felt important the moment I walked in and until I was literally walked out to my car. I believe from my one meeting, the truth, you will never feel alone. I got that feeling, and it meant so much. That's that injured neighbor on the Jericho Road who doesn't see people passing by, but feels seen, listened to, valued, and restored. And what a beautiful opportunity we have to do that.
Lori, as a closing thought, what challenge do you have for people in business, entrepreneurs, corporate leaders in this journey of acting and being like the Samaritan?
At work, we do have challenges, right? But I think it's so important to offer applying, the lessons that we have learned from the Samaritan, to serve with excellence, the high quality as a reflection of our faith. Sometimes it's challenging, but, it really motivates us, right? Beyond our earthly rewards, and using our skills to really benefit others, and ensuring that our efforts glorify God is very important. And also practicing generosity, using our resources and earnings, from our work to bless others. And also finding the time, right, to contribute to causes that really align with our values, and being generous with our time and talents in helping our coworkers and also our community is huge. And speaking words of grace, sharing the gospel sometimes is challenging, right? Naturally with our colleagues, I think it will be sharing as frequently, as often as possible is very important. And that can be challenging, for many, especially at work. But, I think it's really important that we discuss and we share our faith stories as often as we can, as our faith influences our work and inviting them to our community.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for your time. As we've worked our way through this book and as we looked today at the Samaritan's perspective, my takeaway is, how can I look for opportunities to be that person every day and do that over and over and over again, because that gives me a chance to give a good account. Thank you both. Bruce, we'll see you next time. Thank you, Lori.
Thank you.
You.